shoved my graduation cake off the table. Frosting splattered across the patio, candles rolling under people's feet. Then my 11-year-old nephew grinned and said, "Eat it off the ground," and Daisy, the whole table laughed. My mother laughed the loudest. I stood there, knife still in my hand, wondering how love could sound so cruel. I didn't say a word, just walked out while their laughter followed me into the dark. That night, Mom's text lit up my phone. "We've chosen to sever all contact. Stay away forever." My sister liked it. I typed one line back, and that's when everything changed. The backyard looked like something out of a magazine. String lights, laughter, the smell of barbecue drifting through the warm Idaho air. From the outside, it was the perfect family gathering. But standing there with a paper plate in my hand, I could feel the thin layer of tension that no one talked about. My mother, Linda, floated from one guest to another, smiling that polished hostess smile. My sister, Amanda, sat in the center of the crowd, glowing in a new floral dress. Her son Liam perched proudly beside her, soaking up the attention that had never been mine. "Tell us about the Florida trip," someone called out. Amanda laughed, flipping her hair. "Oh, it was amazing. Mom insisted we stay an extra week." Mom nodded, pretending humility. "Well, they work hard. They deserve it." I smiled the way people do when they know they're supposed to. No one asked how Seattle was. No one asked about my degree. On the table sat the cake, white frosting, blue lettering that read, "Congrats, Daisy," pushed to the far corner beside a stack of paper plates and half-empty soda cans. Every time someone walked past, they bumped it slightly as if it didn't matter whether it stayed upright or not. I stared at it longer than I should have because it looked familiar, beautiful, ignored, forgotten in plain sight. A breeze rolled through the yard. The fairy lights swayed. For a second, I thought maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd surprise me. Then Liam ran toward the table, eyes glinting with mischief. His voice cut through the chatter. "Aunt Daisy, Mom says, you only got your degree, so you can brag." The laughter that followed was sharp, ugly. Mom didn't stop him. Amanda pretended to hide her smile behind a glass of wine. I thought about every time I'd been told to share, to sacrifice, to be the strong one, the one who didn't need help, the one who didn't complain. My throat tightened, but I swallowed it down. When Liam's hand shoved the cake off the edge, it all happened in slow motion. The porcelain plate shattering, frosting splattering my shoes, everyone gasping and then laughing again. I froze, gripping the knife I'd been using to serve slices. No one told him to apologize, not even my father, sitting quietly on his phone. The last thing I remember was my mother's voice, light and amused. "Oh, come on, Daisy. Don't be so sensitive." I set the knife down, untied the apron, and walked toward the door. Every step sounded too loud against the wooden deck. Their laughter followed me like music from a party I was never invited to. Outside, the air was colder, the sky bruised with evening. I got in my car and drove away without saying goodbye. For the first time in my life, I didn't cry. I just knew something inside me had finally snapped, and there was no going back after tonight. I drove for hours that night, headlights cutting through the empty Idaho highway. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles burned. The laughter from the party kept replaying in my head, the sound of plates clinking, my mother's voice echoing, "Don't be so sensitive." By the time I reached my apartment in Seattle, it was past midnight. The city was quiet, rain streaking across the windows. I dropped my keys on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and sank into the silence. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, it would be an apology. But when I opened it, the words sliced cleaner than any knife. "We've chosen to sever all contact. Stay away forever." A few seconds later, a small red heart popped up beside it. Amanda's reaction. I stared at the screen, my reflection glowing faintly against the glass. My chest didn't tighten. I didn't cry. I just sat there numb, as if my body had finally stopped trying to prove it could still feel. I opened my laptop, the blue light flickering across the room. The cursor blinked on an old spreadsheet, my budget tracker. 2 rows stared back at me. Parents' mortgage, one for $100 monthly. Amanda's SUV, $740 monthly. Both loans co-signed by me. Both payments automatically withdrawn from my account every month for the last 3 years. I'd signed those papers because Mom had said, "You're the responsible one, honey. Just help the family out." Back then, it felt like love. Now, it looked like a leash. The rain outside grew louder. Drops hit the glass in uneven rhythms like a ticking clock counting down to something inevitable. I scrolled through my messages. Years of polite thank yous, guilt-laced reminders, excuses. Just until Amanda's business picks up. "Your dad's between jobs again. We'll handle the payments next month." Next month never came. The weight in my chest shifted. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was clarity. I opened a new message and began typing slowly, each letter deliberate, each word like a door closing, removing my name from every loan tomorrow. No emojis, no explanation. I hit send. The phone chimed once, then fell silent. I placed it face down on the table. The rain softened. I poured myself a glass of water and watched the condensation slide down the side. For the first time, silence didn't feel like surrender. It felt like control. They had wanted me gone, fine. But this time, they were the ones who would feel the absence. Morning came gray and cold, the kind of Seattle dawn that makes everything look washed clean. I brewed coffee and stared at the steam rising from the mug, thinking of how easily things end, not with shouting, but with a single message. I hadn't slept, but I felt wide awake. The exhaustion had burned itself out, leaving only a strange calm. By 9, my phone had started buzzing non-stop. Mom, Dad, Amanda, unknown numbers from Boise, 100 missed calls. The group chat exploded with demands, threats, guilt. "You've gone too far. Do you know what you're doing to us? We raised you." Not one message said, "I'm sorry." I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled on a gray sweater, tied my hair back, and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing Green First Bank, downtown Seattle branch. Mr. Diaz met me in a quiet consultation office with pale blue walls and a single fern in the corner. He was in his 50s, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Miss Wilson," he said, offering a handshake. "I reviewed the documents you sent. I think I understand what's happening." I sat across from him, hands folded. I co-signed 2 loans, one for my parents' house, one for my sister's SUV. I've been paying them for years. I just want out, he nodded. "You're not the first person to be taken advantage of." Under the word family, he slid a stack of papers toward me. "If you can prove you hold no ownership or financial interest in their property, we can begin the liability release process. You'll also have the option to freeze joint credit access." I handed him the folder I brought. Lease agreement, payabs, email correspondence, even an old message from Mom that read, "The house is ours. You just helped sign." Mr. Diaz read silently, then looked up. "Everything we need is here." He picked up the phone and called legal. "Let's start the release process for Daisy Wilson. Co-borrower removal effective immediately." The sound of his pen clicking was small, but to me it felt seismic. My hands trembled as I signed. Each signature felt like cutting another invisible string that had bound me for years. When he stamped the final page, the thud echoed through the room. He looked at me kindly. "You did the right thing, Miss Wilson. Sometimes protecting yourself is the only way to teach others to respect you." Outside, the wind bit cold against my cheeks, but my chest felt lighter than it had in years. I stopped at a cafe on the corner. When the barista handed me a cappuccino, she smiled. "Have a good day." I met her eyes and said something I hadn't been able to say and mean in years. "I will." That evening, as I cooked pasta in my small kitchen, my phone buzzed again. This time, the family group chat glowed on the screen. "How dare you ruin our credit? You're heartless. You'll regret this." I typed one calm line. "I just stopped paying for people who laughed when my cake hit the floor." Then I pressed send and set the phone down. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was freedom. 3 days passed before the knock came. It was sharp, angry, relentless, each pound vibrating through the thin walls of my Seattle apartment. I froze mid-step, the pan of boiling pasta hissing behind me. My stomach twisted with a cold certainty even before I checked the video intercom. On the screen stood my mother and Amanda, two faces I knew by heart now warped with fury. Mom's lips were pressed into a tight line, arms folded like she was preparing to lecture me. Amanda's eyes were wide, bloodshot, her mask hanging loose around her neck. Daisy, Mom's voice cut through the door high and trembling. "Open this door right now. We need to talk. What did you do with the bank?" I didn't move. The hallway camera showed them shifting from foot to foot, glancing around nervously as neighbors peeked out. Amanda's voice rose shrill, desperate. "You ruined everything. The bank froze our accounts. Mom's credit is gone. My car is about to be repossessed. You think this is funny?" Funny. The word stung, not because of what she said, but because that's how they'd treated me all my life. As a joke, as the strong one who didn't get to have feelings. I took a slow breath, steadied my voice, and turned on the voice recorder on my phone. "Seattle Police Department," I whispered into the 911 app. "Two individuals are outside my apartment yelling and refusing to leave. I'd like to report trespassing." "Do you know them?" the dispatcher asked. "Yes," I said quietly, eyes still fixed on the monitor. "They're my family, but today they're just people violating my boundary." Outside, the pounding grew louder. Amanda's hand slammed against the door. "Daisy, you're destroying this family. You think cutting us off makes you strong. You're selfish, heartless." Mom's voice cracked, half rage, half panic. "We're your parents. You don't treat family like enemies." 10 minutes later, flashing red and blue lights painted the street below. Two police officers appeared in the frame, one man, one woman, calm, professional. They approached my mother first. I watched through the intercom as Mom rushed toward them, pointing furiously at my door. "She's my daughter. She destroyed our finances. We just want to talk to her." Amanda's voice broke into sobs. "She almost cost me my car. My fiancé is threatening to leave me because of her credit. She's heartless." The male officer raised a hand gently. "Ma'am, this is private property. If she's asked you to leave, you need to leave." "She's my child," Mom shouted. "I have rights." The officer shook his head. "You have rights as a mother, but not the right to trespass on an adult's residence." The camera shook slightly as Amanda backed away, her face collapsing into frustration. For a brief second, guilt brushed against me, light, fleeting, familiar. But then I remembered the frosting splattered across the pavement, the laughter, the silence that followed. "No," I thought, "not again." Through the speaker, I spoke quietly, just enough for the microphone to pick up. "If they act like intruders, then the line between family and boundary no longer exists." The officer turned toward the camera and nodded slightly as if acknowledging my words without needing more explanation. He gestured toward the stairs. "This conversation is over. Let's go." Mom turned back to the door, her eyes burning with betrayal. "You'll regret this, Daisy. Blood doesn't disappear just because you say so." I didn't answer. The door stayed closed. They left under the dull flash of police lights. Their footsteps echoed down the stairwell, heavy, defeated, fading into the distance. When silence finally returned, it felt like oxygen flooding into a room that had been sealed shut for years. I slid down to the floor, my back against the wall, the phone still recording. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from release. The audio kept playing, their voices, the pleading, the anger. I saved the file and named it Boundaries. April 17, 2025. That night, I stood by the window, watching the city breathe beneath me. Cars glided past headlights, streaking across wet asphalt. Somewhere below, people laughed, ordered coffee, lived their lives. And in that quiet apartment, a family had just fallen apart without a single scream. The next morning, my inbox filled again, this time with messages I hadn't expected. A Facebook post from Mom, big letters, bold text. "Sometimes the child you trust most betrays you the worst." Daisy stole from her parents and ruined our credit. Some people never learn gratitude. Below it were dozens of comments from old neighbors, relatives, even people I barely remembered. So ungrateful. Poor Linda after all she's done. And then one that twisted the knife. I heard she used her parents' money to buy that apartment in Seattle. I stared at the screen. The old me would have panicked. Written long explanations begged people to believe me, but now I just breathed. They were throwing fire, but I refused to burn. Instead, I opened a new email, short, measured, professional. Subject clarification. Personal matter. Hi team. If you see rumors about me online, please ignore them. Some people fight boundaries with lies. I'm fine and appreciate your professionalism and privacy. Daisy. Then I closed my laptop. The truth doesn't need shouting. It only needs time. 3 days later, an envelope arrived at my office. The letterhead read, Green First Bank. Inside was a document signed by Mr. Diaz. This letter confirms that Miss Daisy Wilson has been fully released from all liabilities concerning the joint mortgage and vehicle loan under the names of Linda and Amanda Wilson. The seal embossed gold at the bottom shimmered under the light. My fingers brushed across the paper, tracing the curve of my signature the moment everything changed. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. That evening, the Facebook post disappeared. Maybe someone told Mom the truth. Maybe the bank called to verify it. I didn't care. The damage didn't matter anymore because I'd stopped living for their approval. Still, my phone buzzed again. A message from a number I hadn't saved in months. You'll pay for this, Daisy. You think you've won? I smiled faintly. Winning wasn't the point. Freedom was. I stood by the window of the Seattle skyline stretching out like a map of second chances. The air smelled like coffee and rain, sharp and clean. For the first time, I felt unchained. Sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of power finally speaking for itself. Weeks passed and the noise finally died. No more late-night calls. No more Facebook whispers. The silence that once terrified me now felt like peace. I focused on my work at Green Pulse Tech, finishing a project that landed me a quiet promotion. Lydia, our CEO, said during a meeting, Daisy, you lead with steadiness. People trust that. It was the first time anyone had said those words to me without a hint of obligation. At home, life found a rhythm, yoga at sunrise, soup simmering in the evenings, laughter with friends who saw me, not what I could offer. Elena brought flowers. One weekend, Marcus teased me about the cactus on my windowsill, saying, it looked like me, calm, but don't touch. Then one morning, I received a photo from Mr. Diaz, my release document framed in the bank's compliance office. We use it as an example of boundary protection, his message read. I smiled, sipping coffee by the window. For once, I wasn't someone's safety net or silent backbone. I was just Daisy, whole, free, finally belonging to myself. A year later, my phone lit up with a single message from Amanda. I'm sorry for everything. No excuses, no explanations, just 6 quiet words. I stared at it for a while, then set the phone down without replying. Forgiveness, I realized, doesn't always mean reopening the door. Sometimes it's closing it gently and walking away in peace. Outside, Lake Union shimmered under the evening light, calm and endless. I breathed in the Seattle air, cool and alive, and whispered, welcome home, Daisy. If you've ever had to cut ties to find yourself again, you're not alone. Share your story below and subscribe for the next. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's justice wrapped in grace. Silent revenge.